Today's podcast guest is Margaret B. Smith, and she shares what it's like to be coaching career-minded professionals how to stand out in the new virtual workspace. She gives us great tips on how to manage Zoom like a pro, how to catch your supervisor's attention, and how to manage up the chain of command. Margaret keeps things fun in the workplace and teaches people how to manage their work-life balance, all in this new virtual work environment.
My name's Travis Sims, and I am the founder and CEO of AGC Accelerated Global Connections. And this is the AGC Experience.
Today's broadcast was brought to you by Beyond Design, where they work to provide businesses with affordable and individualized marketing through quality design and strategic implementation in online media promotions, print advertising, events, and public relations marketing. You can find Holly Brunette and her team at Beyond Design at graphicbeyonddesign.com. And note, anytime you see the AGC logo at one of our events on a sign, print, or social media post, you will know that Holly and her team at Beyond Design took great care of us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited for today's podcast on the AGC Experience podcast show. Another great guest for you here today. But before we get to our guest, I want to just say thank you to our audience. I want to say thank you for tuning in again. That's right, you have subscribed to this podcast. You like it so much that you're going, I just can't get enough. I want to hear it every time a new podcast drops, which is every single Monday morning. And not only are you subscribing, but you are sharing this with others. You're telling others about it. And that's the way I love to learn. If I hear and learn and experience something that has a great effect on me, I want to tell others about it. And I want to share it with them so I can make a difference in their lives and their businesses as well. So thank you, audience, for tuning in, for subscribing and sharing. And I want to get right to our guest today, Margaret Smith. This is a part of our speaker series. So Margaret, you graced the stage on an AGC stage. I believe it was in our Minneapolis event, which was one of our biggest events, and at such a beautiful place too. And so I'll let you tell about that later, but what we really want to know is, for those that don't know you, Margaret, and you're at UXL, a little bit about you, your background, your history, where did you come from? Give us the scoop.
Okay, thank you, Travis. It's great to be here this morning. You know, I think the best way to start this is just to ask all of you a question. Have you ever gone through a transition? Has something happened to you that you weren't expecting in your professional life? Have you ever had a new person join your organization that you were concerned wasn't really ready for the role that they had been given? Were you ever in that situation where you were given a role and you didn't have the right level of support for flourishing in that role? Have you ever really struggled with people not believing that you had the courage to take a risk, or that you really needed an extra boost from someone who wasn't part of your organization to help you show up a little bit differently with the power and knowledge and wisdom and experience that you know you have, but doesn't seem to be well recognized in the organization? All of those things happened to me. And as a result, 11 years ago, which is really hard to imagine now, 11 years ago, I lost my job. During that 89, oh no, well, that was a lot longer than 11 years ago. It was 2009, actually, 2008 and 2009, when the economy was really shifting dramatically. And as a result, my position was eliminated in a very large corporation here in the Twin Cities that I had worked for close to 30 years, and slowly had worked my way up to above mid-level manager within the organization. I was a director, and my position was eliminated. And it was a few days later I was offered another job, but in those few days, I really sat back and thought, what part of my job did I really love the most? And it really was developing my people. It was developing myself as a leader. It was helping to guide, mentor, support, sponsor, develop, challenge, reward, give it that nudge that people need to take the next step to show that I had the not just commitment to their success, but also that I believed in them. And I thought, how can I start a business doing what I love the most? And that's where UXL was how UXL was formed, really. I sat back and I started to develop a business plan around what this would look like. And since then, since 2009, I've been working with mid-level managers, primarily in organizations all over the Twin Cities, helping them show up as the leader that they know they are capable of being, helping them have their voices heard, helping them understand their strengths and use their strengths and the things that make them unique and special, helping them really flourish in that space. Maybe going through a transition with a tough employee that they're having challenges communicating with. All the different transitions that we go through. Maybe it's a new project that they're being assigned. It's working with managing up, which can be even more challenging than managing your direct reports. So how do you manage those relationships in the levels above you effectively so that you are seen and heard as the future leader that you aspire to be? I also sat back and thought, I need to capture all of the attributes of the leaders that most affected me, the ones that had a profound impact on how I showed up as a leader, and then also, what do I believe I did that helped the people around me show up better, get the rewards and recognition that they were hoping for, reduce conflict in their lives, help them go through transitions better. And so I captured all of those things in my book, The 10-Minute Leadership Challenge. And this was really where you and I, Travis, I think first connected, was around my book and the one chapter that is in here on courage. Whenever I do a workshop around my book, there's a little assessment tool, and courage comes up as the one area because it spans so many different parts of our personal and professional careers. Courage to take risks, to say yes, even more courage to say no, the courage to challenge somebody else, the courage to ask a really tough question, the courage to ask for what you really want and need out of the job that you have, the role that you have, the supervisor that you're reporting to. So courage spans so many different parts of our work life. And so that's what I chose to speak on, at AGC, was courage, because it is such an important part of all the different aspects of our role. Today, COVID definitely impacted me very big, as it did with all of us, I'm sure, both personally and professionally, to be honest. And those personal and professional lines crossed very quickly when we all were sent home to work. Many of us challenged by the fact that our roles changed overnight, from not just being an employee of a company and we show up in that office space and we work there and we can stay very focused, but now all of a sudden we had people at home that needed our help because now they were in school at home. And how do you balance all of those things effectively? And I was impacted by all of that. Clients that were interrupted and had a hard time staying focused on the subjects that we were working on with them. Companies that said, no more outside consultants, sorry, we have to cut our budget. But employees still saying, Margaret, I desperately still need your help. How can we make this work? Adjusting my service models, working totally virtually with employees, learning new technology that I had so desperately avoided and felt good about that, actually, but realizing that I needed to embrace it now and figure out how I could use all the tools that were out there that were changing very rapidly in order to accommodate those of us that needed those tools to be able to operate our businesses or to go to school or whatever the situation was. So COVID did impact me, but I can tell you that going forward, I think it actually is going to change my business for the better. Because what I have found is that when I offer something in a public forum or go back to all of the contacts that I have, I now can reach people around the world where my community was pretty tight knit to the Twin Cities and a few people outside of the Twin Cities that I had connected with in an event or working with a company that brought a lot of people together from all over the country. But now when I do something, I can connect to so many more people in a much broader and wider array. So that blanket has spread, which, going forward, I think is going to be a real benefit to me. So I had to change my mindset, embrace technology, see the good that it could bring to the work that I was doing, make my clients comfortable with it, because many of them were like, oh no, Margaret, meeting with you one-on-one is really the best. I love sitting across the table from you, drawing things out, figuring this out, strategizing. We can't do that. We can't do that in a virtual world. And, just saying, let's give it a try. I think we can. And then figuring out how we do that, sharing screens, using all of the, if you're comfortable with Zoom, there's so many annotations you can do to check things off, to draw circles, or there's just so many pieces of that technology that continue to get better. And even this is just a great use of some tools that maybe we wouldn't have even considered in the past. So slowly, one by one, my clients got more comfortable with using technology. They started to come back. I put together different programs that allowed them a little bit more flexibility from a financial perspective, so that they didn't have to rely on an employer to help them pay. And one by one, I think also employers were in a little bit of denial. Oh, this is going to be over soon. Our employees aren't going to need this help in a virtual world. We're going to be doing things completely different. And as a result, they weren't willing to pay. And now they're realizing, well, we've been at this for 6 months. I think maybe we should continue to give these people support, because eventually we are going to be back, whenever that happens to be, and we'll slowly come back. And I need those people that I believed in the past to be able to jump in and be as effective as they were when we were all here together. Now, I can tell you that my coaching business has changed and my consulting business has changed, because the issues people are dealing with are different than when we were all together. So I'm focusing more on, how do I lead a remote workforce? What are some of the tactics for keeping people connected and engaged and motivated and inspired and excited about the work that we do? How do we avoid Zoom or whatever, if you're using Microsoft Teams or Google Duo or whatever you're using? How do I keep from that screen fatigue? What can I do for my employees? How can we have fun using this technology, so that we don't miss out on the things that we loved so much about being together? How can we still be together but we're apart? And so helping my clients work through some of those issues has been really valuable to them, because they've said, wow, I think I can do this now with the people that work with me, or let me give that a try. How about if you and I test it? I've had people contact me and say, Margaret, I have to do a presentation to 45 people on Tuesday. Can I run through it with you and have you help me use all of the different things that you've used with me, so that I'm really comfortable and it comes off very professionally? So I'm that safe tester, so to speak, helping them show up the way that they really want to and need to in whatever environment they are in. I also got a very large consulting job with a company that needed someone to manage part of their workforce that lost a leader. And that was not something that I was doing on a regular basis before. I'd step in short term. And it's been great, because I love building relationships with people and really seeing and helping them flourish. And so by working a little bit more closely with this team, I have had that opportunity to take what I had loved doing so much with an organization before I started my own business, and bringing all of that to this small company and helping them just really grow and flourish in a different way. So, that was a long, drawn out story. but it touched on several different things: how I got started, what I'm doing now, and how COVID really influenced me and made a shift that I thought was going to be tough, but it's turned out to be really positive. And I'll integrate many of those new tools and new learnings into my business as I go forward.
Yes. We're getting a little feedback again on turn me down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
That'd be great. But then I have a question for you, and that is that now that we are in COVID-19, you're working remotely, you're sharing Zoom and all this technology and all the things that you shared with us and talked about. I'm curious about employer and employee and that relationship and how it's going now when it is virtual. I mean, it's been sometimes 6-7 months now since you've actually been in a physical room with your employer or with your direct supervisor. And are people able to, because maybe the workload is, or the work assignments are similar or the same, and they're figuring out how to do it, technology, but are you able to keep that team environment? Are you able to keep that, working relationship that you once had with your employer?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Travis, because one of the biggest issues that people have come to me with is, okay, so there's 20 of us on this Zoom screen, we each have our own little tile, and my boss maybe doesn't even realize that I'm there because we can't all fit and they have to scroll to the next page to get to the, so how do I keep myself visible? Maybe when we were all in the office, I could stop into his or her office. I would see them in the hallway, and those random meetings can be just as valuable as the planned situations, whether that's a one-on-one or a large group meeting. But so I've shared with them some of the ways that they can have their picture move up and be in the first screen. I've shared with them how they can use some of the things like the participant, like the hands clapping or the high five. I get that in the screen here, or the thumbs up. How to use chat effectively. Don't ever be afraid to schedule a one-on-one with someone, even if all it is 15 minutes as a touch base. Be the person who plans the fun activity. There are happy hours, there are games, there are coffee meetings, there's networking that can be done via a virtual situation. And so be the person that stands out by organizing some of those things for the group. I hate to even say normal because I don't even know if it's normal anymore, but in the old days, which really was only 6 months ago, you could very quickly and easily grab somebody and say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee, or, would you like to have lunch with me? And you can still do that. You're just eating at a desk, that happens to be 10 miles away from the person. Or maybe you even order Jimmy John's or whatever, Grubhub, for a group of people, and you all have lunch together, but everybody got their meal at their own home or wherever they happen to be working. So you just have to stand out in a different way. And it's taken us a while to figure those things out and get comfortable with them. But if you are comfortable with that and you plan for it, you can be the one that sets the stage for some really different and creative things to happen in your organization. As far as an intact team that is working, one of the things that I've been doing and suggesting is every morning, 15-minute huddle. Just get everybody together, whatever technology you're using, get everybody together for 15 minutes, and it's always the same time. Figure out a time that's most convenient. It can't be, it's tough to do it right now with school going back in session to say, let's get on at 7:30 because that's a time that, you're trying to get your family up on their computers and checking in and logging into whatever. So I usually Now I've scaled it back and said, let's do this at 9:30, 15 minutes. That's it. What do you have on your plate today? How can we help? What help do you need? Everybody goes around. They each have 30 seconds. We're done. And then you kind of know everybody's checked in. They feel supported. They've seen their team. Some organizations do it at the end of the day. Some organizations do both. I started doing both, and it became, I don't know, a little bit overwhelming for people to have to do both. So we rotated. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays in the morning at 9:15, Tuesday, Thursdays in the afternoon at 4:15. And it's just like, what happened great today? Sometimes we just need good news, right?
Yes.
It's just like we're inundated with bad news all the time. So what happened that you're really excited about today? And just sharing those, especially at the end of the day, something good that happened, you go into the evening with a whole different perspective and mindset, and almost thinking, how can I make that happen for myself the next day? What I need to do to make tomorrow great. And then, by starting in the morning and asking, what do you have on your plate today? What do you need help with? And somebody else says, oh, I'm doing the same thing. How about if we work together? What are you doing right after that? Or I did that yesterday. How, let me help you through that. Or I'll send you the document that I created that has an outline on it on what you might be able to do. Or I just talked to Joe and he had a great solution. Why don't I connect to the two of you when we're done? So it just really keeps the team working together and cohesive and sharing the ideas that they would have maybe just in a random ad hoc basis in the morning, wandering around the office or stopping in to visit with somebody. And so I think if you take advantage of just a few little things that you can do, it can have a profound impact.
Oh, thank you, Margaret, so much. That is huge advice. I took lots of notes in that section.
Okay.
You're talking about things, and I do a lot of Zoom meetings. I'm on Zoom meetings almost all day long. And you shared some things there. I'm like, oh, how do you do that? I'm going to have to ask you after we get done with this podcast. And I'm curious too, what your crystal ball says, and not that you can predict the future, but I'd love to know, do you think, are people enjoying the experience of being online? Are they being able to be more productive than they were in their office? Do you think that we might see a future of less people in the office and more people working remotely? What's your prediction?
It's been really interesting because I have a couple of clients who actually their employees were asking for a work at home policy, feeling that they would be more productive, or there was absolutely no reason why they needed to be in an office and deal with that traffic, have to pay for parking, take public transportation, whatever it might be, in order to be there, that I could do my work from home and I think I would be more productive. And companies were really resisting. And then all of a sudden, in 36 hours, they had to figure it out. Even companies that have high security standards, like financial industry, had to figure out how they send their employees home and keep the security of their internet access, their systems access. They figured it out. And honestly, Travis, aren't we hearing every day about companies reevaluating the space that they have and the amount that they're paying for rent for space that they may not really need going forward? I'll give you a really good example. My son, he just moved back to Minnesota, he and his wife and their son, but they were living in Montana. And he decided that he wanted to change jobs. And so I was kind of guiding him through that process, helping him with his resume, preparing for interviews. And one of the things that he said is, Mom, things have really changed. I'm looking for a job in the Twin Cities, and my competition was people in the Twin Cities that could commute to this job. And now my competition is the world. Right? Because
Wow.
I don't need to live in Minneapolis to work in Minneapolis. I don't need to live in Eagan to work in St. Paul. I can live in Eagan and work in San Francisco. I can live in Eagan and work in London. It's, you have to deal with the time differences, of course.
Sure.
But it's amazing how It provided that the job is one that can very comfortably be done from wherever you happen to be. I also see this, why not? I think it's going to change a lot of things. I also see it impacting the real estate market tremendously. I've heard more and more people saying, you know what, I'm selling my house and I'm moving to the cabin.
Yeah.
I can do my work from the cabin. Why would I want to live here? Why would I want to have two homes? Where I just prefer living at the cabin. Or I have always wanted to live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm going to go there. I'm selling my big house here. I'm going to Coeur d'Alene because now I know I can work from anywhere. So it's really changing a lot of things, and employers are getting much more comfortable with it as well. The company that I'm doing a lot of consulting with right now, of course, everybody went home and slowly have been coming back to the office, but it's been very flexible. If you have a meeting where you feel as though it would be better if you were here, or if you need to meet with people face to face to literally solve a problem together, then you're able to come into the office. It's not locked up. There's obviously very strict COVID protocol for being here. And we try to maintain a level of safety, and everybody should actually be doing that. So I think not only have employers become much more comfortable trusting their employees to be just as productive outside of the work, they've figured out how to do that effectively, and employees are realizing that they can, and it's just working out fine. But it took us, I don't think that we would have done it nearly as well if we hadn't been forced to very quickly.
Yeah, the necessity of nature. Ooh,
right.
Oh boy.
Right.
No, that's great information, and what a profound thing to think about is that your competition is now the world, that you're not limited to the people who are in your market space. So that's wild. I'm even seeing people, and this is maybe way to the extreme, but I personally know people who are working from sailboats, that are working from RVs, and they're just like, we're living our best life. I'm working from my laptop as long as I have an internet signal, and then I'm out by the campfire at night at the campsite. So interesting times for sure.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes me worry a little bit is that, I love this. Actually, I feel more productive. I get a lot more done in a day. I'm spending less time driving in a car. I miss the human contact interaction tremendously, as someone that just loves being with people and networking with people. But I worry about all the empty buildings that this could create. That will be one day driving past all these empty buildings. How will they get repurposed? Some of those huge buildings that once officed thousands of people, what will happen to them? So
Yeah, I've talked to some friends of mine that live in New York City, and they've just said this has had such an impact. When you think about all the restaurants, even in Minneapolis, Travis, the restaurants that have impacted, and now out west where restaurants were really just starting to get their feet underneath them, and now the smoke, you can't sit outside and eat. And here in the Twin Cities, in just a few weeks, it's going to be, well, maybe even today.
yes,
it's going to be too cold to sit outside.
Yeah.
I do have some very big concerns about those big empty buildings, how our downtowns are going to be impacted tremendously as a result of those big office buildings not having the number of people. I wish I had a crystal ball, because that I could give good guidance to those businesses and say, here's what you need to do. But yeah. I don't have that.
I was actually just in an in-person meeting yesterday. I have one, it's a small group of people, almost like a mastermind type group. And I'm a participant, not a leader in that group. And they've been meeting in a side room in a restaurant, which has worked great during the summer, because they have even though they're at 50% capacity, they've been using the outdoor space tremendously. But they came in yesterday and said, hey guys, we're nearing winter and we're not going to have that outdoor seating, and we're going to need to expand into this room because we're still at 50%. And I totally get it. I understand it. So speaking of in person, and you were one of the few people in 2019 to be able to grace the AGC stage. Like, you were a live speaker in front of a live audience, and it was a huge audience. So I'd love to know, and our listeners would love to know, what was it like that day? Can you remember back? Was there any takeaways or feelings or moments that you remember fondly?
I think, for me, and I'm an extrovert, so this has been really, for those of us that are extroverts, this time has really been challenging. I was reading an interview with Carol Burnett, and she said that when this is over, whenever that is, that she was going to have the biggest hugging party she ever
I love that.
history of the world, and I kind of agree with her. I think that's the thing that I miss the most, is that personal relationship, or the physicality of people. Yeah. But when I got up on that little stage at the Women's Club, which is where that session was, every time I look out in a crowd like that, and they are so attentive and engaging and nodding their heads and smiling, there is such affirmation of the story that I'm telling, or the information that I'm sharing, the questions that I'm answering, and you get so much energy from the people in the room. And that's what I really, really miss, is that just energy that exuded from that audience. So the group of people that you assembled that day, they were very supportive and enthusiastic and energizing. So it's so easy to stand in front of a crowd like that and just, share my story. And that particular day was about courage. And it was an interactive session also, so people were able to share information as we went through the workshop, or the session that we had. But that's really the case. The audience was so supportive and energizing and fully engaged that it made it really easy for me to stand up there and talk to them.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. If our listeners or watchers on this podcast want to find that talk, if you go to AGC Accelerated Global Connections on YouTube and search for Margaret Smith Courage, you're going to find that talk. It was an amazing day. We had about 100 people in that audience in an absolutely beautiful auditorium setting at the Women's Club of Minneapolis. Such a historical, beautiful building, and an amazing crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been on the AGC Experience podcast show today with Margaret Smith with UXL. And Margaret, if people want to know, how to find you after today's podcast, if they listen to this or they watch this podcast and they go, oh my gosh, I need to connect with Margaret. I know that she could help me with my team. I know that she could help me with my employer. I know that she could help me with, manage up, network up within the company, and all those great things that you shared with us. How do we find you? How do we get in touch with you?
The best way to do that is through email. You can also go to my website, which is uxlnow.com, or the email address that Travis is just showing you, Margaret@uxl.com or uxlnow.com. You have to spell that out. So it's YOUEXCELNOW.com. And you can go to contact us on my website, or just send me an email. I'd love to spend some time just talking through whatever issue it is that you're dealing with, and how I might be able to help.
Awesome. And I can imagine too, just like the what your son had to say, you've worked a lot in the Twin Cities. I mean, you're pretty well known in this marketplace, but now I imagine that has to be expanding huge for you.
Yes. It is.
Awesome.
It is. And, I think that would not have happened under different circumstances. So, in spite of everything that we've been dealing with, I'm still grateful.
Great. So we're getting listeners on this podcast from all over the country and all over the world. And if you feel like that Margaret could help you and this podcast resonated with you in some way, please reach out to her no matter where you are. whether you're in Chicago, New York, it doesn't matter. Give Margaret an email. And if you have someone in mind, like if you're thinking about someone in your life right now that you know personally that could also benefit from this podcast, please share that podcast with them and help impact their work life. Margaret gave us some great tips and advice here today. So Margaret, thank you so much for being a guest on the AGC Experience show. Thank you so much. And audience, thank you for tuning in. You stayed all the way to the end. I'm so proud of you. I'm so thankful for you. Thank you for tuning in. Now, please hit that subscribe button before you go. Every single week, every Monday, we have a brand new podcast that airs wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching podcasts. And be sure to share others and tell others about our podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.